Coming up, what if the unthinkable should happen and America elects as their next president the former defeated president, the twice impeached, thrice married, 4 times indicted, 6 times bankrupt, 34 counts convicted felon, civilly liable and self-confessed serial sexual assaulter Donald J. Trump?
And when you're a star, they let you do it. You can do anything.
Whatever you want.
Grab him by the pussy.
Already, I can foresee the hundreds of comments from the MAGA cult accusing this video of Trump Derangement Syndrome, but every word of that description is true and irrefutable. I could have added insurrectionist, but as that verdict is not yet established, in a strictly legal sense anyway, I'll just stick to the established facts. But more importantly, how would a second term for Trump impact the UK? Stay tuned. Boris Johnson, the disgraced former Prime Minister and Daily Mail columnist, has this to say about the prospect of a second Trump presidency.
The global wokerati,
Whatever that means.
are trembling so violently you can hear the ice tinkling in their niggeronis.
I don't even know what that is.
But a Trump presidency could be just what the world needs.
This from the man who gave us a disastrous Brexit, put a son of a KGB agent in the House of Lords, partied through the COVID lockdowns, and eventually got booted out as Prime Minister for defending another serial sex offender. Little wonder that few people in the UK would agree with him. But before we make a more sensible assessment of the implications of a President Donald Trump for the UK in 2025, let's first take a moment to look at his recent pick for his Vice President, J.D. Vance. Vance is best known among US voters for his Rust Belt, ultra-conservative politics. A so-called America Firster, he prioritises domestic issues over those of other countries following a doggedly isolationist mindset, except of course when it comes to Israel, where he's a strong supporter of the Israeli government. But looking at statements he made 8 years ago, reported by CNN, it pretty soon becomes clear what he really thinks of Trump, the guy who's just nominated him as his vice presidential pick.
And I cannot stand Trump because I think he's a fraud. Well, I think he's a total fraud that is exploiting these people, who is a total fraud.
I agree with you on Trump because I don't think that he's the person. I don't think he actually cares about folks.
But I think that I'm going to vote for third party because I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place.
And if you haven't really appreciated the full impact of those comments by Vance about Trump, here are some more previous comments Vance has made about his new mob boss, this time reported by Fox News, the American and rather more successful equivalent to our extreme right-wing GB News channel here in the UK. They report Vance as saying, "I'm a never Trump guy, never liked him, terrible candidate, and said you'd be an idiot if you voted for him. Might be America's Hitler, might be a cynical arsehole, cultural heroine, noxious and reprehensible." And finally, here's ABC with their selection of historical Vance quotes.
But I can't stomach Trump. I think that he's noxious and is leading the white working class to a very dark place. He's leading our political discourse to a very negative place. If Trump is elected president, he has to be a much different president than he was a candidate. As a candidate, he was fundamentally divisive, arrogant. I'm a never Trump guy. I never liked him.
But despite making his true feelings clear on many occasions, the arch-hypocrite J.D. Vance is now a born-again disciple of the MAGA cult, worshipping Trump as his god. Political opportunism at its height. And talking of height, sources close to Trump are suggesting that one reason for Vance being Trump's pick as his vice president, despite all these previous insults, is that of all the candidates he was considering, Vance is the one that is notably shorter than Trump. The mere fact that this suggestion is credible tells you everything you need to know about how much we trust Trump and his judgment. So, Vance may be his running mate, but he's certainly no friend of Trump. But more worryingly for us in the UK, Vance is also no friend of the UK. Here he is at this week's Republican Party convention in Milwaukee.
One additional thing. I was talking with a friend recently, and we were talking about, one of the big dangers in the world, of course, is nuclear proliferation, though, of course, the Biden administration doesn't care about it. And I was talking about, what is the first truly Islamist country that will get a nuclear weapon? And we were like, maybe it's Iran, maybe Pakistan already kind of counts. And then we sort of finally decided maybe it's actually the UK, since Labour just took over.
The idea that Labour is in cahoots with so-called Islamists is a widespread trope in right-wing circles in America, as well as amongst the Reform UK Party Limited company here at home. But moving on to Trump himself, in the aftermath of the recent UK general election, the new Prime Minister, Keir Starmer, received a congratulatory phone call from President Biden within hours of the result. Meanwhile, Donald Trump sent his congratulations through a post on his failing social media channel Truth Social. But not to Starmer, to Nigel Farage. He posted, "Congratulations to Nigel Farage on his big win of a parliamentary seat amid Reform UK election success. His weird capitalisation, not mine." But Trump completely ignored Starmer's victory, which nicely sets the tone for their relationship should Trump succeed in his bid for another term. Here's journalist and my 11 VR table tennis buddy Ian Dunt talking on Sky News this week.
The Trump administration is a pro-Putin administration. That is, there's no point in beating around the bush on it. That is what it is. They follow that foreign policy. When he says we'll come up with a solution for Ukraine, it means we'll do whatever Putin wants in Ukraine. The problem, I think, really for Lamy and for Starmer will be trying to have a relationship with these guys without being humiliated by them. And they are bullies. That is all they do. You either bully them or they bully you. That is the relationship that they understand. To try and have a healthy relationship with someone like that is basically impossible. And what that will eventually lead to, I would suggest, is a retreat back to Europe where people are not behaving in that way.
Ian picks up on one of the major impacts another Trump presidency would have on the UK. Trump's ambivalence towards Ukraine and his admiration of Vladimir Putin. A Trump presidency would see American funding and provision of weaponry and ammunition for Ukraine's defence efforts terminated, making an eventual Putin victory far more likely and emboldening him to attempt further incursions into neighbouring nations' sovereign territory as Putin tries to realise his dream of recreating the old post-war USSR as a first step towards his ultimate ambition of regaining territories that he claimed made up the Russian Empire at its medieval height, as Putin made clear during his interview with Putin patsy and Trump fanboy Tucker Carlson earlier this year. The UK efforts to oppose Putin's territorial ambitions will be fundamentally impacted by another Trump term as president. And it's not just about Putin. Trump's unpredictable foreign policy, particularly regarding the Middle East, and his uninformed bull-in-a-china shop approach to conflicts like Israel-Hamas, could increase global instability. The Labour government, feeling the full force of the pro-Palestinian sentiment across the UK, is already having a hell of a job navigating the complexities of trying to stay a staunch ally of the USA whilst opposing the genocide in Gaza. With the Trump presidency likely to swing even more behind the Israeli government, things can only get worse for the UK as Starmer presides over the promised top-to-tail strategic defence review. And all this with a background of Trump's previously stated disdain for NATO and comments suggesting he might even withdraw from the alliance, which could severely undermine the UK's security, which relies heavily on NATO. According to Politico, Trump allegedly told the European Union in 2020, "By the way, NATO is dead and we will leave. We will quit NATO." Trump wouldn't even need to pull out of the alliance completely to effectively bring it to an end. As Politico also reported back in February, Trump called into question Washington's adherence to NATO's Article 5 mutual defence provision, which requires allies to rally in support if one of its members is attacked, declaring he would encourage Russia to attack NATO members that weren't spending enough on defence. Aside from the security and defence implications for the UK of another Trump presidency, there's also the impact on trade. Trump's protectionist trade policies will negatively affect the UK. During his first term, Trump introduced tariffs and trade barriers as part of his protectionist policies to make America great again. A second presidency will see him go even further, with him promising this week to add a further minimum 10% tariff on products from elsewhere in the world. This new tariff would sit on top of existing tariffs that both he and Biden have previously imposed, and makes a mockery of the Brexiteers' promises of a trade deal with the USA after leaving the EU. That prospect is, if anything, further away given another Trump administration. And no video on the prospects of a second Trump presidency's impact on the UK would be complete without mentioning climate change. Sure, it's not UK specific, but we share a planet, and Trump has expressed intentions to roll back many of the environmental regulations put in place by the Biden administration. This includes rescinding the Inflation Reduction Act, which has been pivotal in promoting clean energy projects and reducing American emissions. Trump said he would expand drilling on federal lands and offshore, ending the temporary pause on new liquid natural gas export permits and reducing restrictions on methane emissions from the oil and gas industry. Trump plans once again to withdraw the United States from the Paris Agreement, undermining international efforts to combat climate change. The Republican Party policy document, Project 2025, plans to diminish climate research initiatives, including cutting funding for climate science and removing climate change considerations from policy-making processes. Finally, a Trump administration would eliminate clean energy programs established under Biden, such as those supporting renewable energy projects and energy efficiency improvements, and shift the focus back to traditional greenhouse gas-emitting fossil fuels. But I'll leave you with one piece of good news. The polls in the USA are having huge problems with participation rates. Americans with cell phones, as they call them, especially the younger generations and certain socioeconomic groups, often don't pick up the pollsters' calls, meaning they have to wrangle and fudge results by multiplying the few responses from underrepresented demographics. It's also said that many American pollsters rely on calling landlines, which tends to overrepresent the support for Trump. I've instead been following 538, which is part of the ABC network, who have a track record of highly accurate non-partisan predictions based on a combination of polling, economic and demographic data to explore likely election outcomes. Even after President Trump got his ear nicked this week, and even after Joe Biden's disastrous performance in the first presidential televised debate, this is their latest prediction as of the 18th of July 2024 for the presidential race. In 538's simulations of the 2024 presidential election, Biden wins 53 times out of 100, Trump wins 47 times out of 100. Still too close to call, but a Trump victory is far from a done deal. So I hope you found that interesting, and let me know in the comments below if you'd like me to do another video on American politics once we know for sure whether Biden will indeed be the official Democratic nominee after the Democratic Party convention in late August. Please give this video a like, hit the bell for notifications, subscribe if you haven't already done so, and share a link to this video on your social media. Thank you so much.